So, hello. First of all, hello to everyone. First of all, I'm happy to have a few guests here. So, what do I have here? First of all, the question is, why do we do this and how do I plan to do this? And then there is a little bit, for discussion, also for you. And I will go through what you need for the CIA exam, like, for example, the content and a little bit the process, how to subscribe for the exam itself, and also a little bit through the way how to answer the questions. Why and how? Maybe a little bit about my background. I've been running CIA courses since maybe very long, 20-25 years. I've been very active with the IIAs here in different countries, in German-speaking countries, but also on a regional level for the European Confederation of IIAs, and then also on the global IIA. So I had also been involved in discussing how the exam should be run, and also a lot of other, I would say, professional issues. That's one side. The other side, as I said, I do run CIA exams since a long time, and we were always looking for material which we can use locally, translate, for example, and that was often difficult with the, I would say, the very big providers. So at some point I met the people from PSC, and they sort of allowed me to translate their material into German, so that we have something here locally. And I think the material is actually quite good. So the idea is also to promote that a little bit, and I also recommend that to people in my CIA seminars. And for me, it's sort of, I do that since a very long time, and I've been involved in the profession very long. So for me, this is typically, it's an hour, and it's also an opportunity to chat a little bit with people who are interested, and maybe give them a little bit of advice for the preparation. That's it for the time being. I schedule around about an hour. Typically, it takes that time. And first question would be for me, do you have any specific questions yourself? What would be your motivation at the moment for the exam, but also for listening? As I said here, I would say typically people listening here, they are interested in how to prepare, and also maybe a little bit of a comparison of the different approaches you can follow. So what I said is here in my agenda, I said, first of all, there is a before the exam, so sort of you have to make up your mind. You have to figure out whether you have enough time to prepare, and eventually also which material you want to use. And then you have the process to prepare. Some people, they spend a lot of time on that, or they do it also over a long time frame, maybe sometimes a year or so, I have seen. And other people, they want to push it through, so they spend maybe only a month or 6 weeks to prepare, depending also, I would say, on your experience and on the time and flexibility you have. In the exam, there are some things which could be interesting to know. I would also say a little bit about that. Then, as I said, I've been working in internal audit myself very long. Currently, I do actually also seminars for audit management, quality assessments, and so forth for the national IIA. So I have a lot of exposure to auditors, experienced auditors, and we discuss often how you can run your audit function and what would be good and what not. And we also talk a lot about practical things like specific audits or tools, audit procedures you would use. And the other thing is that as I said, I teach very long for CIA and CISA exams and so forth. And there are also lots of discussions with participants, how to prepare, and also, of course, sometimes participants they had already tried to succeed in the exam and they failed sometimes 1 or 2 times, and then there are also experiences they bring, and typically also explain a little bit about the current state of the exam. Yeah, there are different learning systems. I will talk a little bit about these. I would say there is a huge range, I would say price-wise, but also from the offers you get, and also from the, I would say, from the actually the usefulness of the system. Some of them are not so good, and others they are either very well established, or they are maybe better, or the, how could you say that, the price-value ratio may be better. Yeah, sometimes in some languages you can have a translated exam. For example, we have that in German, it is available in Chinese, and in many other languages. It can also be a question whether you want to use a translated version. And I have a little bit of an overview of the content. As I said, it's good to understand what IIA means by the terms, and yeah, how you can access this when you prepare for the exam. So yeah, as I said, it's a little bit about me. I did a lot of professional exams over the time. For me, it was also interesting. It was first of all a learning opportunity, but also yeah, a little bit of a challenge for myself. And also I think it was very good for my professional development and my career. Typically, I paid for the exams myself, and the return on investment was very often just a few months. Yeah, so that is also, I would say, a good argument. And also, as I said, it's for learning. Yeah, I've worked actually a lot with big audit firms and other large organizations. Within the audit firms, I had a lot of contact also with smaller entities or public sector entities. And yeah, and also in my seminars, actually, I have lots of people from different industries, public sector, financial services, normal industry, service industries, and so forth. And what I've learned here is that there's a certain common, I would say, body of professional practices. And of course, and depending on the industry and your environment, maybe slightly different. And that also is maybe important for the exam, because in the exam, in some areas, they ask you very specific questions about how to audit something or how to judge on something. And that can be very industry specific. So it can be something you have never seen before. And here, for me, I've learned A, that can be interesting, and B, from the seminars I've been running over the last 25 years, I have also learned that always for all the stupid questions which are in the exam and in the preparation material, typically there are industries where things are exactly done this way. So if there is a very weird question about whatever, say stock management or maintenance, it may be that in an industry where this applies, it's really done in the strange way you see in the question. Yeah, so it's also a way to learn. And for me, if you prepare, it would mean just accept some things as they are, even if you yourself would do them different. Either they are done generally in that way, or they are in this specific situation. They may be different from what you would expect. That would sort of, I would say, ease your learning. Okay, at the moment I'm running lots of workshops. I do a little bit consulting to audit departments, and actually I do run quality assessments, I would say maybe 2 times a year. That's enough for me. Very often, I would say, interesting organizations, very large organizations, or public sector bodies. That's actually, it's quite interesting. Okay, that's it. Let me see something else. Yeah, the first I wanted to start with is the exam content. As I said, I want to explain a little bit what this is about. First of all, the CIA itself has 3 parts at the moment, and I have a list a little bit later. And you have a new exam since a while, Internal Audit Practitioner, And that's a little bit, I would say, for beginners also, or as an entry-level exam. And it's a lot about how you do an audit, a little bit how you organize an audit function, and a little bit also about specific techniques. In the normal CIA exam, you have one key part. It's more about the positioning of the internal audit function in an organization, about its objectives and so forth. Then you have the second part. This is about one important thing, typically annual planning, and it's about performing audits. So it's more of preparing an audit, preparing work papers, reporting, follow-up, and so forth. Yeah, so it's more the practical side. And then you have the next part here. This is a lot, I would say, business management. It is IT a lot, and it is accounting and finance. Yeah, so you have these three areas more or less here. It's very broad, yeah, so that can be a lot. And you have a lot of overlaps here and also in this area. Yeah, maybe here is more overlap. So that is what you need to know when you learn. You start somewhere with part 1, and then maybe you just go a little bit into part 2. And if you have done part 1, maybe you learn for part 2, you can also go a little bit into part 3, because in part 3 you have a lot of business basics which will be needed when you perform an audit in part 2. The certifications had been updated maybe 3-4 years ago. IIA does this from time to time. And you know that at the moment, the professional practices are in a review phase. So the professional practices will be updated maybe next year. And that would also mean, does not also mean, but the IIA also wants to change the concept for the CIA to update this. Yeah, so if you do it now, it's okay with the learning material you have and so forth. But the structure may change maybe in 2 years or so. It's one side, but the other side is also very important to know that the internal audit profession itself does not really change so fast. Yeah, so what you do in internal audit is maybe 95% the same as 10 or 20 years ago. Yeah, you prepare an audit, you do an audit, you have to document and so forth. And that means even if the IIA does change the exam concept, I would say basics, they won't change. Yeah? So it's not that bad, but it's good to know that at least the administrative side may change. Yeah, as I explained to you that you have here the 3 different parts. And what I said is actually I would start to learn maybe for part 1. And maybe a little bit for part 2, and then I would go for an exam, and then I would learn further for part 2, and maybe also already a little bit for part 3, go for the next exam, and then sort of do the third. Yeah, so there are some overlaps. Then if you want to know about the content, very important. The IIA has something called syllabus, and the IIA describes in the syllabus the core topics. It's not very detailed, and it also has the audit competency framework. Now, so we will look into that on the next slide. The syllabus is a good checklist for you, whether you have prepared enough, whether you know a little bit at least about all of the topics. There are also many local translations, so you may want to look into this if you want to access the material a little bit easier. You also, as I said, you have the competency framework, and what is maybe very important is that the learning system is aligned to the IIA content. So that's also something what's happening. Each time the IIA does change the exam, the learning systems, they are restructured. to allow you to find the content a little bit easier, and then they look for new topics, or maybe sometimes topics are shortened and so forth. Yeah, but typically the learning system does cover the IIA content, and when you look into the table of contents of the learning systems, you see the IIA topics. Yeah. Sometimes the learning systems structure this differently because it's more practical for you for learning. Yeah, this can happen, but typically you only have to find the topics. Yeah, so typically the learning systems try to help you to understand things, so they use the IIA topics, but they often present them in a more practical way. Yeah, these are the details here for the exams, for the parts. When you look into the professional practices, the standards, for example, it's very important to also look into the standards. Yeah? You see an overlap between the CIA exam and the professional practices, the standards, for example. For example, this is more, I would say, general. Yeah, the first thing here, for example, you have, the standards 1100, you have 1200, you have 1300. This is a lot about COSO. I would say this is intro and 1000. So you have sort of, how could you say that? You have a certain overlap between the professional practices, which is clear, and what the exam does ask from you. Yeah. So what you can do here is actually, or what you should do, yeah, when you prepare for the CIA exam, do read the standards and also maybe the introduction for the standards. Yeah, this is very important. I had many people in my seminars who failed in the first part, the first time, because they did not read the standards. Now, you don't need to reproduce them by heart, but you need to understand the concept and a few of the terms and sort of how they think an audit should be organized. Yeah, so it's good to read them thoroughly, and then it will also, you will see that when you answer the quiz questions for the preparation, the sample questions. Then you have here practice of internal auditing. This is, for example, these are the standards 2000 very much. This is 2200, 2300, 2400, and this is 2500, 2600 more or less. Yeah. So you see there is a strong overlap, but be careful. Here they will focus on many practical situations. So as I said, maybe it's related to stock management or to IT security or to financing something, a project. Yeah, so yeah, or actually project management. So there may be lots of situations from risk assessment when you do plan for your audit function, or from an audit, yeah, from whatever observations, audit observations, and you are asked whether the audit procedure had been appropriate, or whether, for example, that would be an issue or not, yeah, or what you should do as an auditor. So yeah, that is actually the interesting thing here. And yeah, as we said here, you have business management and financial management, and you do have IT as topics. Yeah, there are also many situations from an organization which can occur when you do an audit. Yeah, so they expect you to have a certain understanding of how business is run, and it's very broad. Yeah, so here the problem sometimes will be that you don't have any idea about the specific situation, and then you can always guess. And actually what I did, I learned a lot from using the sample questions in my learning system I used long ago. Yeah, I used many questions, and I would say I understood the situation, and then it was easy to answer. Or what also happens if I missed the right answer, or if I did not understand the situation, I was reading the explanations, and I learned a lot from the explanations too. Yeah, and here, as I said, sometimes you have to accept that things are different than you would do them. Yeah, because that's on a more general level, and or it's so specific that you just don't know that. Yeah. For example, one question we often discussed is about retail. And how do you, I think the question is, how do you judge the efficiency or effectiveness of a retail entity? And then they said finally it was, I think, sales per surface, so per square meter or whatever, which is very, very simple. It's so simple that you won't like it because it's almost stupid. But when you have retail auditors in a seminar, they will tell you, yes, that's exactly the way it is done, because we have tried to make it more complicated, but we have learned that it doesn't make sense to make it more complicated. So it's not helpful if you do something very sophisticated. Here in this case, it's very simple, and that's then also the correct answer. And it's an answer which is so simple that you typically won't choose it. So, as I said, when you use the questions, try to digest it and don't question the questions too much. And as I said, in the learning systems, typically you have thousands of questions. I think in the PSC system, there are at the moment more than 3,000 questions. So that's a lot, and a lot to rehearse. This is the competency framework, as I said. Just an example, these are here topics, and you see, let me see, these are topics, for example, objectivity and independence. We have seen standard 1100. This is the code of ethics. This is 1200 and so forth. So you see the standards again, and I just show this to you because, as I said, IIA, I have to, IIA has this on the website, also in translations, and it is more detailed. This is just this is the German version, for everyone who wants to learn a little bit German. And you see here, this is this pillar we had seen before, and these are the topics. And then here you do have detailed topics you should know. And once again, this is something I would look at. And I would say, they say, for example, you have to describe the function of internal audit. Okay, can I do this? Yes. Roles and responsibilities. Yes. Difference between audit or assurance and consulting services. Do I know this? No, I don't know this. I have to check it. So that is something you can use, for example, to get a general access to the CIA content. That's just an idea. And that gives you some security. If you have a learning system, you know that's a lot of material, and here you can do a quick check and see, okay, there's something I may have to read a little bit more about. Okay, so about the logistics. First of all, there are some requirements before you can sit the exam, or before they will accept you, or whatever, before you will get your certification, actually. These requirements need to be fulfilled. Sometimes, for example, you may need a statement of work experience. Also, they only need to be fulfilled when you want to be certified. So that means that you still can register, and you sometimes, with some of the requirements, you can even sit the exam without having fulfilled all requirements. So that means that eventually you do already the exam, and then you sort of get some of the paperwork parts of it done after the exam. This may sort of give you a little bit flexibility. Then there are educational requirements, and that is one of the reasons why this entry exam had been provided by the IIA. So if you don't fulfill the educational requirements, for example, you can do this entry exam, and then this will replace the requirement. Yeah, so if you do the entry exam, then sort of you can sit the CIA exam with, I would say, without fulfilling some of the formalities. For example, in Germany, many people study and they have a sort of a very long study, like a master's degree in internal audit. At least most of the people have this. And they always had a hard time to, and people who didn't have it, they had a hard time to sit the CIA exam because they had maybe only a short study or whatever. And with the CIAP, you can sort of sit this exam and then you just do the CIA. So that may be interesting. A certain amount of professional practice is required. As I said, you can deliver that after you have been sitting the exam. Character reference, you have to find someone to sign that off for you, maybe a previous manager or so forth, or maybe a CIA or a CPA. That's also helpful, someone who has a certification, because the people who are certified, they have to sign every year that they don't lie. Yeah, so they could sign your character reference. Yeah. So as I said, a CIA, a CISA, a CPA, or so forth, that would be helpful, or maybe a former employer or so forth. You have to commit to the IIA Code of Ethics and Professional Practices, so that yeah, this is quite serious. Yeah, sort of. We will have a quick look at the Code of Ethics later. Yeah, then. You have to register, and that means in general for the IIA certifications, and then on a second step, sort of you have to get the voucher for a test, for a practical exam, and then with the voucher you can go to one of the exam service providers and you can book a slot, and in the slot you do your test, and then the test is graded, and if you have sort of succeeded, then you have one part, and if you have all three parts, and if you have fulfilled all the requirements, you get your certification. Yeah, then what else? The test itself, part 1 is a little bit longer, so you have a little bit more time. Part 2 and 3, they are a little bit shorter, and you have a little bit less time. 125 questions in 2.5 hours, that could be quite a lot, depending on the length of the questions. And what I have been told from the participants from the exams in the last time, the questions, they are a little bit longer than in earlier times. So a lot of people struggled with the time, yeah. And they said it's not really that the questions are so complicated, it's just, it's a lot of reading, yeah. So that is something you should keep in mind. Yeah, that there are lots of short questions for preparing, yeah, but in the exams there may be relatively more longer questions than you have seen before. So the only thing I want to say is if you do it in one language, whichever, even English or your national language, it can be that you have to push through. Yeah, so that may be something you would try to rehearse when you prepare, that you are fast enough. Yeah, not too fast, but fast enough. If you talk about that here, not being too fast, typically when you work on such questions, you may take maybe 50 seconds in average if it's a normal question. Now, if it's very long or if you have to do a calculation, you need more time. But if it's a normal question, it's very often it's roughly 50 seconds if it's in English. Yeah. If you are faster, you will make much more errors. That is what I have seen over many years in the seminars, because we tried blocks, maybe 20 or 30 questions, and try to see how fast can we be and how is the error rate. So if you are too fast, you will get a very bad error rate. Yeah, so you should not do this. And yeah, if you are too slow, then you won't be able to answer all the questions within your time frame. Yeah, so you have to find a good pace for yourself. Yeah, a good speed, not too fast, not too slow, and then try to see that you can answer, for example, these 120 questions within 2.5 hours. Yeah, so it's roughly, I would say, 2 minutes per question. And I've just said, typically it's 50 seconds per question. If it's a normal question, so you may maybe spend 1.5 hour going through the exam, and then you may spend maybe half an hour or 1 hour more with the difficult questions. Yeah. Because if you do the difficult questions too early, you get stuck, and then you are lacking the simple questions at the end. Yeah. So look a little bit, and if you rehearse, maybe try to figure out how fast are you, and well, what is your speed? Do you need to speed up, or can you even spend a little bit more time, be more relaxed? Okay, yeah. Then that is it. After the exam, you have the CPE requirements. This has also been a little bit changed in the last time. 40 if you are an active internal auditor, 40 hours, and 20 if you are inactive per year. Yeah, you have to document that for the IIA, and they do audits. So every now and then you may be asked to present your whatever participants' statements also from the exams, from the trainings. Sorry. Yeah, what else do we have? Preparing for the exam. Yeah, for me, first of all, one question is, what are my objectives? I know people who really want to learn something about internal audit or about business. There are some people who only want to have the certificate as fast as possible. Yeah. For me, for example, when I did these exams, it was also a little bit for learning about the structures, concepts, and so forth, and was also actually a very good language training. Yeah, for example, very in the beginning, I did a certified information systems auditor exam, and I was working in a very huge IT service provider's computer center, but it was very German. Yeah, so it was difficult to learn English terms for audit and for IT. And it was, for me, it was cool to do the CISA because I learned a lot of whatever, as I said, global concepts, all the terminology and so forth. And that was very helpful. And that can also be a reason to spend a little bit more time than the minimum. So work-related objectives, maybe personal objectives, as I said, also very often that motivates more than the business or the company objectives. Then when do you want to have this? Yeah, maybe at the end of the year, or before you change a job, or before you start a new job, whatever. How much time do you have to spend? CIA exam, that can cost everything, I would say, between 120 and maybe 300 hours of preparation. Yeah. So if you are very fast and if you have a good background, 120 or maybe a little bit less, maybe okay, but you need to spend a lot of time for the sample questions. And if you need to read a lot, and if you have not such a broad background, you may need to spend more time, and then it can be quite time consuming. So that's hours, not days. But it's sort of hours spent on preparing. Then your learning style. Yeah, some people like to read a lot, other people don't like to read a lot. I learned a lot with the sample questions. That was for me very practical, and I could digest the content very fast. But I have seen people reading the books first, and then after that, looking into the questions. Yeah, so it's a little bit, you have to ask yourself your style. Some people also learn with flashcards and whatever you have as material. The learning environment is helpful. Yeah, if you have maybe family, sometimes you need a free space for yourself to set yourself aside and to be undisrupted. Maybe you can do that in the office. Some people, they listen to the webinars when they are driving in the car or in the train. So it sort of, I think it's good to have at least a place where you can learn constantly over the time before the exam. Yeah, okay, that is this. And yeah, there are a lot of things which help you to prepare for the exam. First of all, here the IIAs, they have a lot of information on the exam. You can register there. Sometimes they have people which you can contact to get information. There are some practice questions from the IIA, but actually that are not too many, 325. And you can use them, but typically, these questions, they are also in the learning systems. Yeah, so if you have this booklet from the IIA, it's nice, but and they also have sometimes they publish on the website, they sell sample mock exams, but it's typically that all these questions, they are in the different learning systems. Yeah, so if you have a learning system, you don't need the practice questions. There are some courses, some places you get courses online, offline. Actually, I prefer the offline courses, the live courses very much, because yeah, it's more motivating and it's more interactive. You can talk to the people. So if I would choose a course, I would either do something online, which is not too long. I think PSC is also offering that. Maybe 2 times 1.5 hours, that would mean half a day, and then you have a little break in between. And what's very important, you can always ask, and that is something I would also recommend. It's not so good to sort of watch these things and do other things in between. Yeah, I can tell you, I've been running, I'm lecturing at a university, and I've seen that throughout Corona, that the moment the students switched off the camera and they obviously did something else, yeah, the class was bad in the exam. Yeah, and the classes where the camera was on and they were sort of asking questions all the time, the exams were much better. And the exams were almost the same. It was interesting to see. Yeah, so if you can have something where you have real people which you can ask and so forth. I would always prefer this if I get it paid by my employer. Yeah, many employers pay it, or even at least they support the stuff. Then I would do that in addition to learning material, which is only virtual. Yeah, important, as I said, the IPPF professional standards. And there's a code of ethics and so forth, and there are these practice guides, and implementation guides, and there is a lot of material you can read from the IIA. But as I said, the standards are very important. Yeah, that's something I would really read. Yeah, you don't need to know them by heart, but you should understand all the terms and the concepts. Yeah. Then a learning system is something I would always use. Nowadays there are a lot on the market. Yeah, as I said, I like the PSC system because it's a little bit like the official IIA branded system, and it's typically it's more affordable. Yeah, so and they have some translations also. Yeah, I would say there are some of the systems which are good for learning. As I said, this PSC system is okay. From the IIA, that's okay. Climb is also okay. And there are some others I have seen which I don't like so much because they are not very well maintained, or sometimes they are not, it's not enough. Yeah. And then sometimes you also find very cheap books on Amazon. They are really bad. So I would choose one of the 3, I would say, well-known learning systems. And they are different, but they are all good for learning. So typically what I said, I like a lot the sample questions. Yeah. And then also the explanations. Why is something like this? There is a reason for things being like this or not being like this. I've learned a lot with the sample questions. Then many of these learning systems, they have books, for example, or here in the PSC system, they have the chapters and you can read them online. You can do that. Yeah, for me, I did this usually only to look up things. Yeah, or maybe I'm sort of I maybe quickly read these chapters, but I'm not very, I would say, thorough reader of such books. Yeah, it's often a little bit boring. But it depends on your personal style. You have flashcards here. That means there's typically a topic and you can reflect on the topic and then look on the backside for an explanation or reference to the text, for example. This is also helpful. I know many people who learn like this. Yeah, as I said, I use the quiz questions more, but the flashcards are also a good instrument. Then live courses, as I said, something I like a lot if I can spend the time and the money, because it gives me a platform for learning and reflecting. Mock exams, this is also very helpful. I don't like the very long mock exam. So maybe if it's 60 questions or even 40, that's for me okay. Yeah, you have a time block. You can see how that works out. And here, for example, in the PSC system, what you can do is you can create as many as you like, and from whatever, a chapter or a part, and you get a mix of questions, and yeah, you can go through and see how many points you get. Reference is often mentioned. You don't need that much reference. Actually, you won't have so much time to read things. Yeah, as I said, standard, some IIA material, that's enough. There are books. IIA also recommends books. You can use them. I think you don't necessarily need them. There are 2 books from the IIA which are okay. I would eventually look into, but as I said, if you have not so much time, you will not find the time for the books. If you are interested in IT audit issues, you can use material from ISACA, the IT Auditors Association. They have material for the CISA, Certified Information Systems Auditor exam. And here, for example, if you have an old CISA review manual, that may be interesting to look up IT topics. It's not very scientific, but it's good for preparing. And many people have it because they did the CISA maybe a few years ago. So that would be a tip. Yeah, there is a little bit more information here on the PSC website. Yeah, and as I said, there are lots of other learning systems you can use. Books from the IIA and so forth. Okay, let's see. Then strategies for answering the exam questions. Yeah, okay, maybe 1 point. If you sit in the exam, you have 4 answers, A, B, C, D. You have a question, and sometimes you have a lot of explanation before that. It's often describing a situation, and that can be very long. I will show you an example in a second. You have a question and you have 4 options to answer. So 1 point, very important. There's only 1 correct answer. Yeah, you have to choose 1. Another important thing is, if it's wrong, it doesn't matter. You don't get a point, but it's also not subtracted. So if you have no idea at all, the best thing is just guess. Yeah, because then you have at least 25% probability. Yeah, so it means if you have 4 questions and you always guess, then you should have at least 1 point, 1 correct, 1 correct point, because, well, probability is a quarter, and that would give you in 4 questions 1 hit at least, hopefully. And if you are a little bit brighter and you sort of use your gut feeling, the probability may be 50%. Yeah, so even if you have these 4 questions and you have no clue and you use your gut feeling, you may have at least 2 out of the 4 points. Yeah, and there's no subtraction. Yeah, so that's one thing. Yeah, if you went through all the questions once, at the end, sort of you have highlighted, flagged the difficult ones. You have some which you may have not answered. Then go maybe a second time and try to answer the ones you had not answered. And if you have no idea, just sort of use your gut feeling. Yeah, guess. Very often that's a good approach. It's not always correct, but there is a higher probability to get a point than just sort of crossing something. Okay, so the answer patterns. Yeah. One answer pattern is one is wrong, one is clearly right, and the others, they are also clearly wrong. This is easy. Another one could be, this one is correct, this one is wrong, this one is correct, and this one is correct. Yeah, this is also easy. So the question would be, what is not the right approach? Yeah, and then you have one which is stupid, and the other three, they are okay. Very often you have a situation like this. This one could be, this one could also be, this one could be, and this one could be. Yeah, this is difficult. Yeah, so there is typically one which is better. Yeah, so maybe it's this one. Yeah, this is a little bit better than the other ones. Yeah, so the question is, what is the best approach? All four approaches could be correct, but one is better. Yeah, and if you have such a question, don't worry and don't make it too complicated. Yeah, because in these questions, very often you have to think about the exam is global. Yeah, so everyone, whether you are in Greenland, in Abu Dhabi, in Chile, or in China, should find the same answer. Yeah. So it's not very sophisticated, because the moment it gets sophisticated, it's very cultural. And then it's not general anymore, because someone from the north would answer different than someone from the south, for example. So the questions, they try to be very simple. Yeah. So if you have four options and one sticks a little bit out, and even if it looks very stupid and very sort of, that's too simple, then probably it's the right answer. Yeah. So this is a very often a pattern you find in these exams. And another pattern you may find is, this is stupid, this is stupid, this is so-so, and this one is better. Yeah. So two answers are wrong, they are stupid. One answer is so-so, and another answer is good. Yeah, that's also, and that's a way to make a difference between the people who are well prepared for an internal audit job and other people who are not yet that well prepared. Okay, so then you will find keywords. Yeah, most, all, except, and so forth. Yeah, if you have something like all or never or so, this is very absolute. Yeah, and then very often that's sort of misleading you. Yeah, because in real life, very often it's not absolute. Yeah, it's depending on the situation. Yeah, and that is also what is expected from an internal auditor, that you can adapt to the situation. Yeah, so if you are very strict, then that can be wrong. Yeah, so that's a risk. So very often when you have these very strict answers or questions, you have to be careful. Yeah, they try to mislead you. Okay, yeah, how would you answer? Then first impression, as I said, your gut feeling, very often it's right. Yeah, it's correct. So you can trust that to a certain extent. Yeah, very often what I do, I eliminate wrong options. Yeah? Like, for example, in this case, you just cross it out. You only have two left, and then you already have a 50% probability of being correct. Yeah, as I said, absolute things are not good. If you have two or more things which are exactly the same, then that cannot be, yeah, because that needs to be taken out, because there's only one right answer. If you have opposites, yeah, most inclusive, they say, what's the most general answer for something? Yeah, because as an auditor, as I said, you need to be flexible. You have to have a general approach. And then after this, you look into the detail. Genau, don't change answers hastily. That's also risky. Yeah, because you had your first impression, and that's often good. Yeah, not always correct, but it's often good. Yeah, so if you change it, then very often you have started to think, and then you make errors. Okay, yeah, what else? That was it more or less. Yeah, don't leave questions blank. Yeah, you can click everything. There's no subtraction. And that's it for the time being. Yeah, there are a few sample questions here from the PRC system from part 1. This one here is the one I took first. Yeah. Why did I take this? This was very, very long. Yeah. So actually, you see here, there's already a cutoff. It goes ahead, and then here is a question, and there are the answers. Yeah? So that was very long. It was really endless almost. Yeah. What they often have is that they have here something like a case, and then they have different options, different questions. Yeah, so it may be that you have one of these cases, and then you get sometimes 1, 2, 3 questions related to this. Yeah, so it's always the case and then the question, because the question has to stand alone. That is what I said, what can take a lot of time to read. Yeah, so here you have to be careful. That's a very bad example. And in part 3, it may be even worse, because then you may have some calculations, yeah, some accounting tricks you have to play with things. Yeah, so that can be quite complicated. Yeah, then another thing we have here is you have 1, 2, 3, 4 answer options. Let's see what's in the question. Is often recognized that one control procedure by itself is not sufficient. Yeah. Okay, to achieve a particular control objective. Yeah, so we have different controls. Yeah, so this would be in part 1 in this section about internal control. But it's also, you see, it's about an issue, an operational issue, obviously, account, or maybe whatever, invoice processing or so forth. So it's an operational thing. And this can also be in part 2. Yeah, how do I audit this? How do I judge on this? And it can also be in part 3 when it comes to how is a business organized. Yeah, so it's a typical example for a question which you can find in all 3 parts. So, okay, how does it go? Let me see. One control objective is to ensure that purchase orders are made only by authorized purchasing agents to authorized vendors. Okay, you have this for authorized goods. Yeah, so what would it mean? You have some sort of access control within your system to make sure that only authorized purchasing agents can make an order. Yeah. Then you have a vendor list, and here also you have to have a control that only authorized vendors can be used. Yeah, and that means you have to have some sort of control over the vendor list. And you only have authorized goods. Yeah, so there must be something like a catalog which is controlled. Yeah, so you think in a SAP system, for example, you have a list of stuff in the purchasing department. These are the authorized purchasing agents. You have a vendor management component, and you have a list of vendors which eventually can only be maintained by the head of purchasing. And you have authorized goods which are eventually maintained also by someone else in purchasing, or maybe by someone in the factory or whatever. So there is a control over these different items. So, which of the following combination of control procedures would be necessary to accomplish these objectives? Require passwords for each agent and change the passwords periodically to make them difficult to guess. Also, I would say this is clear. Yeah. This is correct. This one, you know, if you have been working as an IT auditor, you do this, but it's nowadays a little bit questioned. And also, it does not really guarantee that they are difficult to guess. So actually, you need rules for creating the passwords. Then you can make them difficult. Yeah. So the answer is a good part, but it's also a little bit critical. So we will see. Require that authorized products be entered into the product database by someone independent of the purchasing function. Yeah, by someone independent looks also good, of the purchasing function. I'm not so sure. Yeah, I said it may be done in the factory, but it can also be another department in purchasing. So here, once again, I say I'm not so happy, but it sounds reasonable. The next one require that purchase agents functions be periodically rotated among purchasing agents. You can do this, but don't necessarily do this. Yeah, it's good and bad because it gives a certain control over what is purchased, but then also they are maybe not competent enough. If you know purchasing, you know that the people there, sometimes they are specialists for different goods, market services, and if you rotate them, then the specialist knowledge is wasted. Yeah, so that doesn't necessarily work like that. Yeah, so I would question this. Require that the authorized vendor database be maintained independent of the purchasing data. Yeah, that's once again by someone independent is good of the purchasing function. Yeah, okay. Maybe if you see purchasing function is narrow. So let's see. I would say one could be, two could be, here I would say I won't like this, yeah, because that's not so good. Then we have 1, okay, 2 and 4, that would be okay. Here I would miss 1, 2 and 4, and here I would not like this, yeah. So I would guess this is the right answer, yeah. Okay. Yeah, what else do we have? So, okay, I hope you have got the explanation. Yeah, as I said, when I look at this, yeah, I would take here, for example, the second answer because this one I don't like so much. Yeah, so I would exclude it here, and here I would miss 2 and 4. Yeah, so I would say the most reasonable would be the second answer. And that was, as I said, it was a long one. Yeah, and what you also have realized, I did read only this. Yeah. I did not read this, which is very long here. When you read this, it's sort of endless. Yeah, and that's also a tip for many of the exam participants. They said start to read the last, if it's a long one, the last block or the last sentence, and try to figure out what the question is. And sometimes you can answer the questions without reading this case. Yeah. So I have a second question here. And then sort of we will finish in a second. Yeah, an internal auditor who encounters an ethical dilemma not addressed in the code of ethics. Yeah, what should you do? Yeah, seek counsel from an independent attorney. Naja, yeah, attorney is maybe a little bit too much. Yeah. Then let me see. Yeah, so here the attorney would be maybe a little bit too much. So I would question this. Yeah, take action consistent with the principles in the code of ethics. That sounds very good. Seek the counsel of the audit committee. That sounds also a little bit over the top. And act consistently with the employing organization's code of ethics. Okay, even if it would be not consistent with the IAA code of ethics, no. Yeah, this is not a good idea, because you have to stick to this. Yeah, so what do we see here? This is the right answer. Yeah, so this one is not so good, this one is not so good, and this one is really bad. And then you stick to this one. Yeah, so that's an easy way how to answer these questions. And the last one here was a short one. Yeah, this is nice and short, but it's, as I said, I've been told that there are much longer questions nowadays. Okay, yeah, if you do such a question here, for example, in the PSC system, if you have a block for a section or a chapter or so, typically what you can do is you can create a quiz, and then what you get here is, for example, this had been, for example, in this chapter, 53 questions, yeah, but you can also say I only want 20, or I want a mix of 40 for many sections. Yeah, and you see how many answers have been correct and what you have flagged, and yeah, what you did not do yet. Yeah, so that gives you a little bit of an overview. I would say maybe what's important to say here is when you prepare, let me see, maybe I can look at this on the next slide. On the last one, yeah, I think that's the last one. Let me see. Oops. Yeah, okay, that's the last one. Maybe a quick note on the preparation. Typically, what happens when you prepare, is, say, if you want to have 100% correct, yeah, that is probably something you will not really be able to achieve, yeah, only if you have very simple questions. But that is not typical, yeah, and I'll make a quick footnote here. We have the problem with the official learning system very often that the questions are very simple, and people, they have very high percentage of correct questions, or they have everything correct, but then they fail in the exam, yeah, because the questions are too simple. So typically, if you use a learning system, for example, like CLIMB or PSC, that looks different. In the beginning, you may have, say, 40% when you start. You start somewhere here in this range. And then maybe if you have learned a little bit and if you have done a lot of questions, you go to 60%. And then maybe at the next step would be, say, around about 80%. And then you have more. Yeah, so it's more that you start here, you get there, then you get there, and then you get somewhere there. Yeah. So at the end, if you have 85 to 95% correct with a normal learning system, like, as I said, the PSC system or so, then you are okay. If you use the IIA system, it's dangerous. Yeah, and in the beginning, just keep calm, yeah, stay relaxed. At the beginning, if you just start from scratch with the questions, you may have only 40% or so. Yeah. And if you are going over 80 and reaching 90 or so, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah. What else? Yeah, that's maybe not really for you. Sometimes I do trainings for CIA. They are on my list of events. And then also, as I said before, for the power system, they have, what I think you can do, you can book a test run for part 1. I think they have some content from part 1 which you can access for free, so that may also be interesting. And they also, maybe that's interesting, they have a chat and they can ask questions. I just see here, you can ask questions in English, but they also do it in Arabic. And I would say if there's a German question, I would answer it. Yeah, okay, that's it for the time being. So then, yeah, thank you for participating, for listening, and I hope you gained a lot of insights. If you have any more questions, yeah, either send me an email or contact the colleagues from PSC. And yeah, I would say I'm looking forward to eventually meeting you again, and wish you good luck with your exam. Bye-bye.